The negotiators believed at that point they were a couple months away from coming to an agreement that would have led to basically a verified end to North Korea's plutonium production capability and its missile program.
The state's attorney has completely exonerated James Boulay.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on over 30 cable stations from Maine to New York City. Last November, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution calling for an Olympic truce, a cessation of hostilities during the Winter Games in Korea. The resolution received support from 157 countries, and amazingly enough, South and North Korea took it to heart and defied the U.S. government and are working together to have a joint team at the Olympics. This has inspired American activists to start an Olympic truce campaign, consisting of everything from teach-ins to webinars to Olympic viewing parties. In New Haven, Promoting Enduring Peace and other groups will be holding a teach-in and rally on Sunday afternoon, February 11th from 3 to 5. Look at their website, pep.org, for details. This is the unification flag. It was carried in 2000 at the Olympic Games in Australia by the Koreans, and it will be carried again this year and adopted by activists in the Olympic Truce campaign. On the subject of Korea, there was a panel discussion on the subject of Korea and nuclear weapons at Yale University on the very last day of January. One of the speakers was Dr. David Wright of the Union of Concerned Scientists. He talked about the Clinton years, and he said that there was an agreement at that time between the Clinton administration and North Korea that halted North Korean nuclear bomb development and missile making. That's quite a different point of view from what you hear from our corporate media and politicians these days. So after the event, I did a short interview with Dr. Wright. Dr. Wright, one hears very often that it is useless to talk to North Koreans. They break every agreement. Diplomacy is useless. What is the history?
Well, I think it would be very useful for people to know more about the history. In the early 1990s, it was clear that North Korea was starting to try to use its reactors to make plutonium for weapons. They were confronted by the international community. There was a lot of concern about war. And at that point, Jimmy Carter went over as a civilian, met with the leader of North Korea, and got him to agree to negotiations. What that led to was something called the Agreed Framework. Was a very interesting agreement that stopped North Korea's ability to produce plutonium and put international inspectors on the ground in North Korea to make sure that wasn't happening. So it was stopping a line of production that would lead to nuclear weapons with verification in an intrusive way that people thought was simply unlikely to happen. A few years later, North Korea agreed to a moratorium, a unilateral moratorium on testing ballistic missiles, which is important because you can't develop longer-range missiles without flight testing them in the atmosphere. The United States has satellites that can verify that. So again, this was a verifiable test moratorium that kept them from developing longer-range missiles. And in talking to the negotiators as they led up to the end of the 1990s and 2000, the negotiators believed at that point they were a couple months away from coming to an agreement that would have led to basically a verified end to North Korea's plutonium production capability and its missile program. Negotiators were very surprised at how much North Korea was willing to put on the table and what kind of verification they were required to have. Now, the problem was that at that point the Clinton administration came to an end. The Bush administration basically said, we're going to put the policy on hold, we're going to reconsider what we're doing. Essentially what happened was the Bush administration was divided between people who thought they should continue the negotiations because they were fruitful, and people who thought that anything you did to negotiate with North Korea was propping up a regime that would otherwise fail and disappear. And as a result of that, they got deadlocked, they couldn't move forward. The North Koreans kept saying, come back to the table, we want to continue this. And finally, the Bush administration decided that they were going to pull out of the agreement. The argument they gave was that they had discovered that North Korea was developing a clandestine ability to enrich uranium, which can also be used for weapons. But the technical people who I've talked to who are involved with the negotiations said the United States was well aware of this, that they had this small program going, and that they made a decision that they would continue to watch it, but that it made more sense to move forward, solve the plutonium problem, solve the missile program, and as a next step to try and solve the uranium program, and thinking that they would be in a much better position at that point to solve it. And so, again, I think if you look back at that, it seems very clear that the North Korean leadership had decided at that point that the economy was an important issue, that they needed to find a way to open up to the West. That to do that, they had to get rid of their missile and nuclear programs, and that those were the only things they had that were really of great value to the West. So it was a win-win proposition from them, and yet, unfortunately, the U.S. essentially walked away from the deal.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
In his State of the Union speech, President Trump called for more use of the Guantanamo prison in Cuba. I came across this picture of a protest at a train station, and also video of people dressed in prison orange demanding the closing of that infamous base.
Breaking of chains, we see a path full of hope. We have found a way. Let them go home. Let them go home. Let them go home. Let them go today. We hear a beautiful sound. It is a breaking of chains. We see a path full of hope. We see a path full of hope. We have found a way. Let them go home. As we said, we are being grounded in all 41 beating hearts, 41 human beings. Just like us, just like our family, just like our loved ones. And we're bringing their spirit here to the White House to transform this space into a place where human rights are seen and respected, where human beings are seen and respected.
By the way, the last estimate I could find was that it costs $1 million a year to keep a prisoner at Guantanamo, compared to just $78,000 a year at a max prison in the federal system in the U.S. News about Yemen. The forces from the invaders' United Arab Emirates are now in battles with Hadi forces. Those same Hadi forces who the UAE was supposedly in Yemen to protect. Every day or every few days, a new atrocity in Yemen from Saudi bombing. But there was a sizable protest in New York City in front of the offices of Senators Gillibrand and Schumer.
And it's time for action. It's time for the Senate to act, because Yemen can't
can't wait. Yemen can't wait. Yemen can't wait. Yemen can't wait.
The Israeli government is hiring civilians to go out and hunt down and catch Africans. The payment will be 30,000 shekels, or $9,000 in our money. You recall the Netanyahu government wants to catch all 37,000 black non-Jewish asylum seekers and expel them from Israel this April. The ad should remind you of ads from an earlier time, 150 years ago in America, ads hiring people to catch slaves. Interestingly enough, there's some opposition from mainline Jewish groups to the expulsion of the Africans. Opposition from Jews who remember when it was the Jews who were the unwanted refugees. This picture shows a tweet from two Jewish organizations in the United States. And this one is from Toronto. It shows a woman from the Canadians Helping Asylum Seekers in Israel. She's standing next to an Eritrean. She helped organize the Toronto Board of Rabbis to get them to call on Israel to reverse its expulsion order. As you know, the Palestinian hero Ahed Tamimi was denied bail on the charge of slapping an Israeli soldier. She spent her 17th birthday in an Israeli prison. She's been there for 6 weeks or longer. The Israeli paper Haaretz reports that over 100 American Jews sent her birthday greetings. And in Germany, people associated with the blog The Left Berlin baked birthday cakes in her honor. Now to Connecticut and the aftermath of a fatal police shooting. Francisco, when did you first hear about what happened last year?
I date his sister, Jasmine Marie Melendez, so I heard about it the day after it happened.
And I suppose you knew the fellow.
Yeah, I knew him pretty well. I knew him for a few years. So. Can
you tell me something about Jayson?
Well, he was a good kid. He was always joking around, you know. He was I don't know. He was a real likable person. It was like he had like a gravitational. Everybody wanted to be around him. He was very charismatic. You know, very respectful. Adults liked him. His classmates liked him. All that stuff. He liked music a lot. He was into rap. And he made a few songs, and yeah.
So it must have been a huge shock when you heard about this thing.
Yeah, it really was. That was the last thing I expected to hear, you know, that my mother told me that morning that somebody got shot that was in a car, and I didn't think it was him, and then an hour later I got a call from Jasmine Marie, and it hit me hard.
So you were wearing a shirt, and we pan back a little bit. You want a murder charge. Why is that?
I believe that whether, you know, the car was stolen or not, I do not believe that Jayson, knowing the person that he was, would use the car as a weapon to hurt anyone. And I do not think that deadly force was needed in that incident. and Jayson was a minor. There was no weapons in the car, nothing to entice the cop to be scared. You know, we haven't seen the video yet, but from what I know about how Jayson is, I do not believe that he would try to murder anybody, and that's why I want charges brought on Boule for murder.
So why did you come up to Waterbury today?
Well, we're here today, you know, for first of all to give support to our best friend, Marie, which is Jayson's sister, and we just want answers, you know? Like, I feel like it's way overdue that, you know, if you killed Jayson, just own up to it. And it's that simple. You kill them, you pay for their crime. Do the crime, do the time.
And you think it was a crime on the police officer's part?
Of course. You killed him and you let him bleed out for 6 hours without medical attention. And yeah, they lied to us. Initially said that he was died on impact, which is not the case at all.
They said that he was shot in the head and died immediately, but then there was a video release showing that he didn't.
And he got shot 5 times in his chest. So.
And I feel like if they were willing to hide something like that, then like what else could they be hiding? Yeah, exactly. They felt they need to keep that a secret. We are feeling all kinds of pain right now. The state's attorney has completely exonerated James Boule. But we are going to keep fighting this, and everyone in Connecticut can and should stand with us. We demand that the 6 members of the Criminal Justice Commission of Connecticut reopen the investigation immediately. We're naming you Andrew McDonald, Juliet Crawford, Mary Melvin, Eric George, Moy Ogilvy, Eric Russell. Reopen this investigation. This investigation by the state police, overseen by Maureen Platt, by Chief State's Attorney Kevin Kane, this has been a sham from the start. They know it, and we know it. They never wanted to hold this officer accountable. They were never looking for justice. We charge the state's attorney and the chief state's attorney with misconduct. The state's attorney has been colluding with the Bridgeport Police Department from the very beginning. The state police, Mayor Joe Ganim of Bridgeport, the state's attorney, they all could have released the video. They had the discretion to at any point, and they did not. Why? Because they have been protecting the police from the start. We know the police can't investigate the police. We know the state police never really investigated this crime. They took the police story from start to finish without interviewing bystanders and people from the community who saw what happened that day. What they saw contradicted police accounts in every way. Maureen Platt, you took the police story from the start. Even when the Bridgeport police lied again and again about what happened to Jayson. Chief A.J. Perez actively tried to cover up what happened to Jayson. He said Jayson died on the spot, shot in the head. But video showed Jayson was alive, moving. He died after they refused to call emergency medical services. He died there in the street. That was only one of their lies. And Kevin Kane, Chief State's Attorney, you've been working quietly behind the scenes to obstruct justice. We've always known where you stood. He has been a part of this collusion. Last year, 2 months after Jayson was killed, he wrote an article, "Emboldened Juveniles Endanger the Public." He called for increasing incarceration and criminal sanctions on our youth. He never wanted to protect Jayson or see through justice. The blatant racism of his ideas are sickening, yet this man is our Chief State's Attorney, the Chief State's Attorney of the state. We, the community, charge all of this as collusion, as misconduct. This decision is sickening. This is a sick system, and we have to keep fighting it. And all of you can be a part of this work. We need a movement together to end police terror in Connecticut, once and for all. It means we need to limit the power of the police, not give them more funding and technology to kill. We need to limit their power with community review boards with real subpoena power. We need to watch the police and challenge the stories they tell about themselves. This is a brutal institution. Violence is everything that they do. Look around at them right here. We are a grieving community standing here to resist injustice. They're armed out there. What do they want to do to us? Stop believing their stories about community violence. Stop believing the stories that they tell about protecting the community. We need to start naming their violence. If we ever want these killings to stop, we need to start telling the truth about the police. And that includes the press. We need to stop treating the police like they're gods. They are people. They are people who are given too much power. They are given the power to kill with total impunity. To end police terror, we need to target people like Maureen Platt and Kevin Kane and Governor Malloy, who sit in their offices and feel nothing and maintain a system that protects the police. Why? Because the police serve them. The police serve power, not communities, not the people. We need to connect the police terror happening in our streets with the terror happening in these buildings. Governor Daniel Malloy, under your reign, more and more people, youth, are being killed by the police. This is the record that you will be leaving office with. You have remained silent on these killings. Where are you? Do black and brown lives matter to you when they're taken in the streets by your own cops? Right now, our public officials couldn't give less a damn that police across their state are killing black and brown youth, shooting them point blank inside of cars, then using cars as the excuse for killing them. Joe Ganim, his people said just last week it was Jayson's fault that he died. No, Ganim, this is your fault. He was 15. Joe Ganim believes that Jayson deserved to die. He is a sickening person. Joe Ganim has led and empowered the deadliest police department in this state. He has stood by the brutality of the Bridgeport police. Please stand with us. There's so much we can do, and we're only getting started. Today, we will be gathering in Bridgeport at 5 p.m. to stand in solidarity with Jayson's family, to honor him, to remember his life, and we'll be there to build power.
And I can't breathe. Now I'm in a hospital saying I can't leave. Calling out the violence of the racist I can hear my neighbor crying, I can't breathe. Now I'm in the struggle and I can't bleed. I gotta ask you. Racist police, we ain't gonna stop.
Apparently in Bridgeport, a teen had taken a car and had gone for a joyride with friends. Police went after him. Understandable. But let me ask, what would have happened if the policeman did not have a pistol? The youth had taken the car down the wrong way down a street. Police cars were following him. How long would it have taken before the teenager had given up? Why should a foolish and yes, criminal act have ended up with the teenager's death? Talk about Britain. Police there do not carry guns. Only special forces have pistols. And the killing rate from guns in Britain is far, far less than in the United States. In President Trump's State of the Union address, he repeatedly talked about the MS-13 gang from El Salvador, some of whose members are accused of a double murder in Long Island. Democracy Now! Dug deeper and talks about facts about the origin of that gang facts that immigrant haters don't want you to know.
Daniel Denver is with us from Providence, Rhode Island, writer in residence at Harvard Law School's Fair Punishment Project. Last year, he wrote an article for the Washington Post headlined, "Deporting People Made Central America's Gangs. More Deportation Won't Help." Daniel, welcome to Democracy Now! Talk about his one of the central focuses last night, MS-13.
I mean, political rhetoric around immigration so often functions to obscure the reality and history of immigration, though Trump is a rather extreme case. And what his obsessive focus on MS-13 does, aside from scapegoating and facilitating the mass criminalization of Latino immigrants in this country, is obscure the origins and reality of gangs like MS-13. MS-13 was born in Los Angeles amidst the refugees fleeing President Reagan's dirty wars in El Salvador, and became a transnational gang that ultimately did so much to destabilize El Salvador precisely because of deportation policies pursued by President Trump's predecessors. This is a problem that's American-made through and through. So to treat it as though it's some external threat being foisted on Americans, it not only entirely takes out of proportion and exaggerates the criminal threat that MS-13 poses to Americans, it obscures the fact that it's our foreign policies, our military interventions, and our long history that unfortunately well precedes Donald Trump of mass deportations and criminalization of immigrants that created MS-13 in the first place.
And talk more about that as you fully develop it in your piece and your work, even why it's called MS-13, but to explain that history, Daniel.
Yeah, so Mara Salvatrucha was formed in LA in the 1980s. Older viewers are probably fully aware, and many younger ones as well, that in the 1980s, President Reagan was backing a right-wing government in El Salvador that was waging a brutal, dirty war against leftist revolutionaries in that country that sent huge numbers of refugees fleeing to the U.S.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.